Would you believe me if I told you there was a way to rewind the clock, possibly even reversing the aging process? On today's podcast, we've got a special two-part interview with someone who has all the answers. Her name is Dr. Deepa Verma, and she is double certified in family medicine and integrative holistic medicine. She is an author and blogger for several publications. She makes regular appearances on Bay News 9 discussing current health topics, and she also filmed a documentary about integrative medicine for Voices in America hosted by James Earl Jones. On today's episode, this goddess of holistic health will be sharing how we can turn back the clock and slow the aging process through a plant-based diet and more. Dr. Verma, we often hear the phrase, age is just a number. Mm-hmm. But how do we keep growing young and youthful through diet and lifestyle? Because we live in a society that is obsessed, and we put so much emphasis on cosmetics and aesthetic procedures and things like that, and we're constantly working from the outside in. So how do we shift the focus to the inside out?
Because we are such a society that's obsessed with, outward appearances, and rightfully so. That's the first thing we see when we look at someone or introduce to someone or we're attracted to someone. Mm-hmm. But we have to understand a lot of that is reflected from what is going on inside. And I think people wait too long to catch up later on in life because nothing really changes. And then when it does, it goes fast and it goes downhill real quickly. Mm-hmm. So I always talk to my patients about 4 pillars of health, and that includes proper clean diet, mm-hmm. exercise, adequate sleep, and stress reduction. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but I always tell people you have to work from the inside out because that's going to be a reflection of what's going on. So those 4 pillars are going to lead into that. With age is just a number, mm-hmm. and I feel that I am a good example of that because people do think I'm much younger than I really am, and I won't disclose my age, but people do on average think I'm 15 to 20 years younger. So I think that's important for me to exemplify, well, why is that happening? I mean, I haven't done anything cosmetic. Mm-hmm. Today I put a little bit more makeup on, but I'm in my workout clothes most of the time. I can live in them. Mm-hmm. Lipstick, eyeliner, I'm done. I don't really wear makeup, all my life, so I really think that's preserved my skin. But I've always been a clean eater. So I think, again, with the 4 pillars, looking at starting with a clean diet is going to be essential, and taking care of yourself because your body is like a temple. You have to take care of it because once things start going wrong from the inside, that's where traditional medicine steps in and it says, well, let's throw all these medications at you, mm-hmm. and those things worsen the picture down the road and they accelerate aging. Mm-hmm. So yes, age is a number. Biologically, there's chronologic aging. Mm-hmm. We have to understand that we can halt it, mm-hmm. and we preserve it. So I don't like to say anti-aging really, I like to say optimal aging. Absolutely.
So speaking of anti-aging, what kind of foods would you recommend as far as like bringing out the youth in somebody?
I think always, first of all, to understand that a clean diet is going to be essential for everyone. So we talk about so many different fads out there, mm-hmm. but as a physician, I have to emphasize there are scientific reasons to do what we need to do. So I'm a big plant-based eater, mm-hmm. and plant-based doesn't mean vegan, it doesn't mean vegetarian. So I always break it down into Flexitarian, mm-hmm. Pescatarian, vegetarian, plant-based, and vegan. Mm-hmm. So being more of a Flexitarian, you can still have the option of eating the meat. So we're talking about like red meat, beef, mm-hmm. poultry, mm-hmm. seafood. Mm-hmm. And you're just choosing when to incorporate more of the plant-based diet and then to have the option of having your meats.
Right.
Being pescatarian is you're having a plant-based diet, but then you want to have your seafood once in a while. You want to have the fish and the shrimp, and that's fine. Being vegetarian, you're allowing the eggs and the dairy, but no meat.
Right.
Being plant-based, you're doing considerably more plants, and plant-based diet means from the plant, so mm-hmm. beans and legumes and lentils and fruits and vegetables, mm-hmm. but really not having anything, any meat sources or animal sources, but having the option if something does have it, mm-hmm. it's okay. Like, for example, I was mentioning that I got these awesome organic rolls from mm-hmm. Costco the other day, and made from all lentils and beans, but then it had a little, dairy powder in it and some egg powder. Yeah. But that's okay if you're plant-based. I'm not like outwardly cooking it or anything like that. And then being vegan. So vegan is just no animal products at all. So very strict, like you wouldn't even have honey because that's involving bees. So I think to each his own. There are no, just as in diets and everything else, there are no cookie cutter diets.
Right.
And that's where we're going to get more into the medical aspect with genetic testing, for example, mm-hmm. to understand. Mm-hmm. But I think the diet is the key. That's really where you start. And the cleaner you are, the less likely you're going to develop chronic diseases later on. And whether it's genetics or whether it's lifestyle, you have to focus on that. It's like a car, right?
Right.
If you're not maintaining it,
Right.
think about the pipes or even plumbing. You get stuff stuck in there.
Right.
And you have to think of your body as just like a well-oiled machine, right?
Absolutely.
So just keep it clean.
So if you were to recommend, certain foods, are there certain foods like nutrient-rich, omegas, like what would be your staple foods?
So we have to first understand a plant-based diet is the most optimal source of nutrition. And scientific studies have shown, and these are scientific studies done by Harvard and done by the big wigs, that a plant-based diet offers the most optimal nutrition. We are in a society that we're obsessed with dairy, meat, protein. Okay, so I have to tell people when you do genetic testing, there are different types, but carbs are important, but they're not your breads, they're not your pasta. Carbs are fruits and vegetables and beans and legumes and lentils, okay? And studies have shown that a plant-based diet offers the most optimal sources of calcium, iron, and protein. Think about the plant-based animals. Think about meats that we eat. They are plant-based animals. We eat cows. Cows are herbivores, right? What do carnivores eat? Carnivores eat herbivores. They eat deer and they eat zebra. Plants are the ones that have nitrogen. Nitrogens are the backbone of amino acids. Amino acids are protein. So if you think about it, nobody really is protein deficient in life unless you're purely starving to death, right? And you have no nutrition. But there's really no such thing as being protein deficient.
Absolutely.
It's very hard. In fact, we are over-proteinizing, and that's why we have high rates of hypertension and kidney failure. Same thing with calcium. Harvard did a study, and it looked at 3 countries that had the lowest rates of osteoporosis. It was India, Japan, and Peru. They had the lowest rates of lowest rates of calcium intake. They had the lowest rates of osteoporosis. Yet we are a country that has some of the highest consumption of dairy, and we have the highest rates of osteoporosis. Also, think about calcium. I'm sure everyone has heard the term calcifications. We get calcifications in our arteries. When we get mammograms, there's calcifications in the breast, calcifications in the kidneys, kidney stones. What is that from? It's extra calcium that we're getting. So there was this great saying that I saw. It had a cow on it, and it said, "Not your mom, not your milk." Every mammal, if you think about it, produces milk for their young, right? And as a mother, we know, I produce milk and I breastfed all my 3 boys. So when you're done producing milk, no other mammal continues to drink milk, do they? And no other mammal gets milk from another species. We're the only mammal that thinks it's appropriate to drink cow's milk. They're completely different creatures. So when we talk about lactose intolerant, it's actually very normal to be lactose intolerant because we're not able to digest milk anymore, and let alone cow's milk. So, and when we get into goat's milk and sheep milk, it's a little easier because they're more similar in their milk protein to ours. But I do a lot of food sensitivity testing and genetic testing, so that shows that.
Yes, that was a mic drop moment for me. I love how you explained that. So easy to understand when you put it that way.
Yeah.
Are there foods that are counterproductive, meaning that are actually going to slow down or actually speed up that aging process?
Yeah.
So you just talked about plant-based. What are some foods that we probably need to stay away from?
I know, it's hard for me to say this, especially in America, because we do, here's the thing, we're conditioned to do things a certain way. And I grew up, I'm first generation. My parents are from India. I'm first generation, born and raised in America. I was born in Queens, New York. And I grew up as a vegetarian, but I did have consumption of eggs and dairy. And that's what we thought as a vegetarian was okay. I never really liked meat, so it wasn't, an issue. And I had fish occasionally. But you definitely want to stay away from foods, and I'm going to simplify it, that are animal products. So that includes meat, dairy, and eggs. And again, we grew up in a society in America where meat and dairy are shown to be healthy, I guess, right? We're taught, you need milk for strong bones.
Right.
Do you remember those milk ads?
Yep.
With the celebrities wearing the white mustaches?
Got milk.
You had these beautiful people, and they look amazing, of course, without knowing much of it's photoshopped or airbrushed. But we were told that if we didn't have milk, we would, start having weak bones and rotting teeth and poor hair. Now we're actually seeing that excess dairy causes all those problems I discussed with the excess calcium. Same thing with excess meat. Studies have shown, and even there's some great documentaries like What the Health, Vegucated, Cowspiracy, right? They show that a diet that is high in meat and animal products leads to faster rates of heart disease, diabetes, stroke, renal failure, hypertension. It's very evident. If we look at the growing rates of obesity, the obesity epidemic is not only skyrocketing in America, it's across the world. We are becoming a much more processed nation, processed world. Things are quick, convenient, right? We want instant gratification. That's human nature.
Yeah.
But now what I love seeing are more of the casual types of fast food plant-based restaurants. I have found some amazing restaurants in the Tampa St. Pete area. There was one just in my location that opens up called Green Culture. I mean, this is a concept we need to embrace.
Absolutely.
To walk in and say, I'm going to have that Impossible Burger or the Beyond Meat Burger.
Right.
I mean, if we even look at the stocks of these, they're like skyrocketing.
Oh, yeah.
And when carnivores or people who love their meat eat that,
Yes.
they're blown away because, I mean, even my own boys, my oldest son, he's more of a carnivore.
Yeah.
And he just gravitates towards meat. But, you know, he's pretty impressed, I think, overall.
100%.
When he has the Impossible Burger Beyond Meat. You have to find good substitutes. And we're moving along so well in making these kind of substitutes. We've come a long way from those soy burgers and things like that,
Absolutely.
or the cardboard tasting dairy products.
Right.
We're actually having things now that taste like the real thing. The yogurt and the ice cream and the milk, you know?
I've introduced a lot of plant-based cheeses to
Yes.
clients, and they're like, what?
Yes.
Is this for real? I'm like, yes.
I know.
These foods are they're emerging and they're becoming more readily available. It's just a matter of taking your time and looking,
Yes.
I think, in the grocery store to find these items, because again, we're so on the go, we're so quick, we need, something fast. It's called Google, and it's called, finding these places beforehand, because they're there for you.
Right.
They're absolutely there for you. Now, in talking about milk, I know that milk in general is sweet. So it being sweet, there's sugar in it, correct? How do you feel about sugar as far as it impacting the aging process?
So when we talk about sugars, you definitely want to differentiate between the high fructose corn syrups and the plant sugars like xylitol and erythritol. So when I tell people to look at the ingredient list, you want to just get the whole sugar load. Then you want to actually look at the ingredients. So is it 13 grams of sugar? Is it 10 grams of sugar? Anything over 10 to 15 grams of sugar, you're getting into that high territory.
Right.
And then you want to see, is it cane sugar? Is it erythritol? Is it high fructose corn syrup? What kind of sugar are they using? Artificial sweeteners. The only acceptable one is stevia, because if you're going into that Truvia, Splenda, NutraSweet, those are artificial.
Absolutely.
So when you're doing diet products, think about it. You're taking out the naturally occurring things. So whether it's low fat, low sugar, you're pulling out what's supposed to be in there. It's actually better to have whole fat products and regular sugar, because when you're putting in the substitutes, they're synthetic and they're chemically made, and those are going to be more mutagenic, carcinogenic. And those actually, guess what? People who are doing diet to think that they're saving on the sugar, guess what? Those are the more higher incidence of diabetes that occur. And same thing with the fat too, because you're putting in something synthetic, and anything that you put in the body that's not natural, the body's going to react. The body's very smart. It loves healing itself. So I'd love to just talk about even just the meat diet, if you don't mind, because what I talked about dairy and how it's not natural. So as a physician, I always have to say that you have to talk about things in a sense that people understand that it's not a fad, because soy was a big fad, whole wheat was a big fad. Now we can't even do wheat without worrying about gluten, right? So let's talk about scientifically why we're not actually made to eat meat. And again, to each his own. I'm not saying everybody should be 100% plant-based. You will find what's going to be best for you. And I always tell my patients, I might be 100% or 99% plant-based, right? But you might need to be 75-25, 80-20, 60-40. If you can do the majority of that and what's right for you, then you'll be comfortable. And when people's labs come back, I mean, they feel better, they look better, they sleep better, they have more energy. So if you look at the carnivores are made to eat meat, right? They have the sharp, jagged teeth. They also have very short guts. Nobody knows that their guts are only 4 times their body length. Okay, gut health is huge. So I do a lot of gut health testing. So carnivores, when they see an animal, right? So put us in a room with a tiger, a lion, and a wolf. For them, if they see a zebra or a deer, they're going to naturally attack it and rip it apart, because that's their instinct. That's what they're naturally known to do. And that's fine. But that's kind of odd for us to go and rip it. We can't even do that. We don't have the capacity or the mechanics to do that. Our teeth are not all canines. No. We don't have claws. No. And it's actually disgusting. We have to use a weapon to kill that. When they kill that animal and even eat it, they are consuming all parts of it. The bone marrow, the blood. I know it's disgusting, but it's nature. We see it. We watch National Geographic and Discovery, right? So they are eating all of it, but they have a 1,200% more increased requirement for protein, calcium, and iron. So it's normal for them. Now here's the reason their guts are so short. Before that meat starts rotting, they can expel it from their body. So herbivores, we're more herbivorous because our guts are about 15 times our body length. If you stretch that, that's the length of a football field. Guess what? Some of the strongest creatures on earth are vegetarian. Horses, elephants, buffalo, bison, gorilla. The rhinos, hippos, these are all vegetarian I mean, look at a horse. We measure things in horsepower. That's pretty powerful. Horses are muscular. You don't really see a fat horse.
No,
right?
you don't.
They're powerful. Bulls are powerful. They're all plant-based animals, but these are the animals we eat. Now, the guts are really long because when we are plant-based, we have to digest, we have to absorb the fiber, the protein. And if you think about eating meat, can we eat raw meat?
I don't think we're supposed to.
No, because we get sick. And if we do, you've heard of people dying from like E. coli poisoning and things like that. We actually have to cook our meat before we eat it. I know people eat rare steak, but it's not good for you, right? And what happens when we cook our meat, you change the molecular structure of it and it becomes carcinogenic. That's why people who tend to consume more meat, studies have shown, okay, nothing's ever definitive, right? But there's always studies going on, shows that, non-vegetarians or meat eaters do have higher rates of cancer, especially colon cancer. But if you're eating a piece of dead flesh, right? I know it sounds disgusting. I'm not trying to gross people out, but I'm just giving you the fact. We cook our meat. You can't eat raw meat. Right. And it sits in our gut. And it doesn't move, even if you have a bowel movement every day, because our gut's so long, it sits there. And you have a piece of rotting flesh in there, and it just creates more inflammation. Right? So naturally, we're actually made to, and I know people say, well, we have canines. Well, gorillas have some of the longest canines. Canines are meant to rip leaves, trees. Look at giraffes, their necks are long. Like, if you look at how we are. Yes, there was a time that we have the paleo, right, and the Neanderthals. That was survival. If we actually look, and there's a great TED talk called The Paleo Myth Debunked, and we evolved. We have molars, we have wisdom teeth, we have things that are made to grind like leaves and stuff like that. We actually were hunters and gatherers, and we got fish and we got plants and nuts and grains, and we used meat to survive. We used the whole animal. We used the fur to keep warm in the wintertime in the caves. We would store the fat and make soups out of it. We were not primarily meat-based, and we've evolved. And so if you actually look at science and the anatomy of the human body and what herbivores truly are, we are actually more herbivorous. And so it jives with us better.
Absolutely. But I love that you said it can be 80, 20, 75, 25. You have to do what works for your body. And you can start intermittently. You don't have to go all gung-ho. No, and again, what works for you, because we're all so different from one another.
And that's why I always do lab testing with my patients to show them. And I just want to say one thing, that a lot of my plant-based eaters actually are less deficient in vitamins than my more traditional eaters. I'd like to say traditional because that's how we grew up in America, like the meat eaters. So when we talk about, oh my gosh, you're plant-based, you're going to have low iron, B12, I have to say, as a disclaimer, I've never actually had a vitamin deficiency in my life. Even through my pregnancies, I had the most amazing pregnancies ever. I delivered all my kids naturally. I didn't even have Tylenol or Motrin. And I enjoyed it so much. I remember even saying I'd love to be pregnant my whole life. But now I changed my mind. But my point is, I had the most amazing pregnancies. I breastfed all of them. They were natural. And I was plant-based. And I delivered amazing, healthy boys. And their health is great now, because I have to say, our health starts in utero. So when I ask my patients how their mom's pregnancy was with them, I want to know, did their mom take medications? Did they smoke? Did they drink? Because all of our gut health and everything that's laid down started when we were in utero. Were you born C-section? Were you breastfed? Children who were born C-section. And I was born C-section, I have to say. You can reverse things. I was born C-section because my mom had no choice in the 70s, and I was a breech birth. And they say when you're born C-section, you're taken out, you're sterile, right? Because when we are born vaginally, we actually get the mother's bacterial flora. And again, I know it sounds disgusting, but this is nature. This is how mammals are born. And what they're trying to actually do now is the kids who are born C-section, because if you have to be born that way, you have to. They're thinking of swabbing the mouth and the nasopharyngeal, the tubes and everything, right? The nose and the mouth with the mother's flora from down there, so they can get inoculated. And that's what helps develop good gut health and everything like that, because we have trillions of bacteria. For every human cell, we have 10 bacterial cells. So we are more actually bacterial than we are human. And 5 pounds of our body weight is our gut health. And gut health is responsible for mood, depression. We have to talk about serotonin. 85% of serotonin is made in our gut, vitamin D deficiencies. So when I look at things as an integrative MD, I'm looking at your mental and physical state. So your depression and anxiety is absolutely linked to your gut health and inflammation and heart disease and things like that, and vice versa. You can't separate it. And I am a traditionally trained MD, so I was taught things, but now I'm kind of repurposing everything and kind of looking at it as a mind, body, spirit connection.
Absolutely.
Lifestyle.
Absolutely. Blowing my mind with that. Oh my goodness. Thank you for tuning in to the first half of our interview with Dr. Verma. Make sure to check out the second half for even more information on reversing the aging process. And while you're at it, Make sure to subscribe.